Hi, and welcome back to Your Autism Game Plan. I'm Joya Vanderlaan, a family nurse practitioner, a functional medicine specialist, and an autism mom. Thanks for joining me today. Today, I want to tell you a little bit about vitamin B12 so that you can decide whether or not that should be a part of your child's autism game plan. Vitamin B12, while there is no magic bullet for treating symptoms of autism, certainly is touted by many of the renowned experts as the single most effective biomedical therapy that they have found that they have used. And not only is it beneficial for those with autism, there's also significant benefit for those with ADHD, for instance, and other similar disorders. So here we go. Let's learn a little bit together about vitamin B12. One of the main reasons why vitamin B12 is helpful for children with autism is because it helps with a process called methylation. Now, methylation is a process that happens in the body, a biochemical process, and it's responsible for a lot of different things. It's a very complex process that is fed by different systems and then feeds into different other systems. They're very codependent and interdependent. So this is a very complex process, like I said, and it takes years for even experts to understand. So I'm just going to go through a quick list of a few of the simple things that methylation is responsible for, especially as they relate to autism. Very involved in neurotransmitter production and balancing, which is closely tied then to things like mood and behavior and sleep. It's also responsible for regulating the stress response, so that fight or flight, that parasympathetic versus sympathetic nervous system. It's also hugely involved in fighting free radicals in the body, partially because it is involved in the production and the recycling of glutathione, one of the body's master antioxidants. It's also involved, very importantly, in regulating immune and inflammatory responses, so making sure that the body doesn't over or under react to various insults. Methylation also plays a key role in the expression and the production and repair of our DNA, and also very important in energy production. And so one of the big benefits we see when methylation is improved is energy levels are improved. Now, interestingly, magnesium and zinc, two other nutrients, are very, very important in the methylation cycle as well. If you haven't seen those videos, or if you're curious to learn more about those two, check out the videos I've just done, just previous to this one, on magnesium and zinc, and learn a little more about those. Let's talk about some of the improvements you can expect to see with vitamin B12. Typically, you'll see improvements in attention and focus, in eye contact, in their awareness of their environment or surroundings. You'll see improved receptive and expressive language abilities, sometimes very dramatic. You'll see a decrease in the odd or disruptive behaviors, improved social awareness, and often they're more interested in interacting with their peers than they had been before. And very often you'll see increased physical and mental energy, and also mental and emotional stability, not as likely to have those meltdowns. I think we can all agree that these are absolutely improvements that we would love to see in our children. One important thing to keep in mind with vitamin B12 supplementation is that sometimes the child's behaviors can get worse before they get better. Now, this is usually because the body is sort of getting used to this methylation process ramping up again. And typically the worsening is temporary and will go away. I usually recommend giving it about a 6-week trial to get through the potential worsening and see those potential benefits. And it's not always just a straight worsening. Sometimes you'll have some behaviors that are worse, but some behaviors that have improved. And so many times parents will say that it's worth sticking it out through those worsened behaviors because they can already see, for instance, better speech abilities. And so they're willing to kind of push through the worsened behaviors because they know that it's helping their child. Now, in the case where the side effects or the worsening of behavior is something extreme, like, the child is hurting themselves or something like that, then it would definitely be worth considering stopping the B12 for the moment and, working on other things for now and maybe revisiting B12 in the future when a few other things have been addressed first. There are a few different forms of B12 that you may have seen out there. Basically, cobalamin is the name for B12, and then in front of cobalamin you have different prefixes to indicate the different chemical structure. So the four most common types are cyanocobalamin, methylcobalamin, hydroxycobalamin, adenosylcobalamin. So that's a lot of terminology to understand. The one that has been studied the most, and particularly with a subcutaneous or in the fat injection, is the methylcobalamin. And that one has had drastic results for many kids. The hydroxy and adenosylcobalamin I often use when a child can't tolerate quite that level of methylation that the methylcobalamin or methyl B12 provides. So it's almost a little bit of a step back, especially depending on that child's genetics. We may start with the adenosyl and or hydroxy forms versus the methyl form, and maybe move to the methyl form down the road. The cyanocobalamin is typically the one that you'll see on drugstore shelves and in the prescription injections. I don't prefer this method, particularly because it's not as effective as helping with the methylation as methyl B12, as the name might imply. How can you get your child to take B12? Well, usually pills are not the best option just because of the way they're absorbed in the stomach and the cofactors that are needed that some of us are deficient in. There is, of course, IV. This is very hard for our kids and requires them to sit still, and it's a bit of a more painful poke to get into a vein. So that one I kind of reserve for very specific cases. The one that I think is most beneficial and that I think you will read about the most in terms of having the most bang for your buck in terms of money and also in terms of effort getting the child to take it is the subcutaneous injection, or the injection into the fat layer just right below the skin. Typically this is given by a very small needle. It's a small amount of liquid, and so the injection is relatively easy. I've even had parents give it to their children while they're sleeping, and many times they won't wake up from it. And so sometimes that's the friendliest way to do it. Other dosage forms include a lozenge, so the child can suck on the lozenge and kind of have a slow release under the tongue. And the last option is liquid that I use frequently as well. And again, I prefer the child to hold it under their tongue so that it's absorbed right from the mouth and it doesn't have to go through the gastrointestinal system. To kind of summarize all this information, I just want to reiterate, all our kids are different, but many of them have the common thread of having a deficiency in their methylation process, and B12 helps with that methylation process. Now, B12 is a very low risk vitamin or intervention to try, and the benefits are potentially huge. And so it's one intervention that I almost always try. I've tried it, I've done it, we do it with our children and also with patients. So B12 is one of those things where if somebody hasn't tried it, I will often recommend it. I hope this information has been helpful to you as part of creating your child's autism game plan. As always, please feel free to email joya@yourautismgameplan.com. And we'd even love to hear your success stories and your struggles. Let us know what's going on for you, and maybe even video topics that you'd like to learn more about. Remember, be gentle with yourself. You are doing a great job.